Talia, it happened a few times, and it actually allowed RNG to just continue the pressure.
And that's what allowed RNG to win game number 1. So I believe we have resolved the issues on stage. We'll be jumping into picks and bans. Lulu, Kalista out the gate. Now we see if Fnatic are going to pivot.
That's the biggest thing. Where is the deviation? So far, it is 3 for 3 on the same bans. The next 2 for RNG, if they keep it the same, is Xayah and J4, and the final ban would be Caitlyn. We're expecting, if there is a change, for it to be the Caitlyn.
If they change anything, it is that last one. But no, they're actually happy enough going for the same kind of style. Now, will they take Tristana and have their own answer for the Janna? Or do they take Janna again and say, we don't actually care about that Soraka, we can gank it again?
I think RNG should ban Johnny here. I don't think that actually, the lane counter of Soraka, I don't think that actually played out the way they want to.
Oh, okay.
Which means they're leaving J4 up. So if the Janna goes through, this means that they want J4, and they're daring them for a Jarvan Janna trade.
But it's also RNG here trying to predict that, Fnatic, you're going to pick Tristana, we're going to take Janna, and you're going to pick Karma against it. So they very early on used this basically a free ban to actually get rid of what they thought would be one of Jess's answers to it. So now it is Fnatic back on the Janna.
This is so interesting because it's close to the run back, but they're saying, okay, if these guys went blue side, surely they wouldn't want to go for exactly the same team composition. How do they mix it up? And also, they guess the Janna priority would be higher than the J4.
I do think, though, Fnatic, actually, if they want Sejuani here, can be pretty happy with it. I like Janna against Jarvan in general, because Jarvan can't really get to your backline easily.
But I also think if you're preparing against Fnatic, Sejuani is not Brox's bread and butter. The only champions he won with in the group stage was Rek'Sai and Elise. They're going to go with the Sejuani anyway.
Yeah, nor is the Jarvan. 2 games played this year for Broxa. Not one of his preferred champions or preferred picks. Going to lock in that Sejuani. Had a good early game on that Gragas. And do we see the Civil once more, much like game 1?
Well, let's see actually what they're currently looking at. A Jinx for Reckless. We know he wants to be on a champion where he can either win lane or win the late game team fights. This will be towards the late game. Okay, more Vayne.
So this is the 3rd Vayne of the World's 2017 group stage. We've seen Rage play first twice.
I would be happy to see Soraka again, and you just perma push that lane and you take an early bot lane tower.
This is bold by Reckless as well. Uzi was the first one to bring it out. Vayne was Reckless's pick years ago, but I agree with you as far as the early lane shove. How does Fnatic get control of that lane? It is a magnet for Broxa to come bottom side, because yes, they're going to push up with the Tristana and the Soraka, and no, Fnatic will not be able to keep up with the push, but that will put them in gank position.
I'd like to see Fnatic get rid of the Cho'Gath, because now we know they want to play around bot side again, because they gotta stop the perma push from RNG. If they give the Cho'Gath again and have the Trundle as an answer, well, then they suddenly also have to play around Soaz at the same time, and they won't be able to do that. They have to pick just one lane they can focus. Get rid of the Shin, clearly respecting the fact that RNG might pick that one and just go full-on bot lane style.
All right, let's find out what the next 2 bans will be. Fnatic, if they can keep it simple, maybe they can open up an opportunity here. In the previous game, it was the Gnar and LeBlanc to close out phase 2.
Yeah, I think it should switch to Cho'Gath. I'm with Deficio here. Vayne needs to get fairly close range, and with the way Let Me was farmed last game, he'd be able to ignore that straight away.
Gnar is open now, though, and it is a bit easier for Source to avoid ganks on that champion if he's left alone in the top lane, in case it is still the Cho'Gath first pick coming in. RNG waiting to see if Fnatic gets rid of the LeBlanc from Xiaohu.
And despite some early deaths on Soaz's Gnar from the group stage in that tiebreaker match, he came back in the mid to late game and had a great performance. LeBlanc closes it out. So now there's some options here. Cho'Gath still open for RNG if they want to have that safe, reliable top laner.
There's also the possibility that Jarvan is a flex pick. So they are waiting for that top lane final choice, depending on what Fnatic locks in for that top lane, and they quickly control the Syndra, who is designed to try and get rid of the Vayne.
Come on, Caps, give me a Radiant Soul here. Push in the Syndra and perma-gank the bot lane against this Soraka. He could go Talia as well, but it is much harder to rush that Banshees because you need more mana after the nerfs. Cho'Gath coming in, not a huge surprise. What are we going to get from the mid lane? Caps needs to be able to apply pressure just like in the last game. And again, I'm looking at Aurelion Sol as an option.
So far, the draft is very solid from Fnatic. It's an incredibly beefy front line with the hyper carry and Vayne. They need to be able to play around that bottom side. Talia and Aurelion Sol play very similar roles, and Talia did show success early on for Caps in the last game.
Exactly, and again, the laning phase is just a little bit harder because you can't straight rush Banshees in the matchup anymore. Xiaohu looking to have quite some pressure in mid lane, especially if it is a jungle Jarvan. That is a strong 2v2 that Fnatic won't be able to beat with Taliyah and Sejuani in this game here. It looks to be that jungle Jarvan here, happy to take the top lane Maokai and just say this lane is isolated 1v1. Let's see if Fnatic can actually kill Soraka early game.
Yeah, but this game will be, I feel like, decided more so in the mid game than in the super late game, because when I think about the way these fights will play out, the Cinder, the Jarvan, and the Maokai click all of their buttons onto Reckless. And if they do not take his health to 0 while doing that, he will be able to shred through them. Vayne is an amazing pick against Jarvan. You get to stun him against his own Cataclysm, and also can kite the Maokai fairly well after the initial CC hit. So it's going to be a very snowbally game, depending on how much gold Reckless can get in his pocket.
And if he gets locked down by that Equinox inside a Cataclysm, that could be game-changing. We'll see what Ming Soraka can do, and CC combination. I mean, it's the third Vayne. Every time we've seen Vayne, it's been an interesting pick. And now Reckless has to show up today.
Yeah, we've seen Rageblade build twice, but this is Reckless picking Vayne against Uzi in this bottom lane here. Against the Tristana Soraka, who can perma-push you on the tower. It is super scary. I know some teams were practicing lane swaps coming into this tournament if they had a really bad 2v2
Fnatic was not one of those teams that practice lane swaps coming into the tournament.
Maybe, at least not the Gigabyte Marines lane swap, but Fnatic in the EULCS playoffs in the spring split actually did lane swap. Level 1 to try and get out of bad matchups and surprise the enemy team. I just want to bring it up. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it is something to consider.
Yeah, and I think it's something RNG does need to consider. With the way I think this lane is going to play out is Reckless farming under turret, and then Fnatic going all out for kills on Soraka, because they get a few kills onto Reckless, and if he can hit his items before Uzi does, they can start creating plays around that lane.
All right, we'll keep an eye on how that plays out. It's game 2 of Fnatic taking on Royal Never Give Up, and as the tournament continues to ramp up, you guys at home can add to the prize pool. You can also donate to charity by picking up that championship Ash and the complementing award skin today. Total prize pool is over $4 million, and that's what these teams are fighting towards. Got to win here, and then they've got to play SKT, and then they're going to make it to Beijing and the Bird's Nest.
And it's so fun now to theorize about the early game. We've seen junglers like get leashed on the red buff, get it, and then insta go down and gank the bottom side as well. And just try and get a big advantage for your late game carry.
Deficio, it's a Jarvan game too, the most unpredictable of early game jungles. He can do 1 buff and gank, he can 3 buff if he wants to. Sejuani, somewhat similar actually, especially with the machete start and the way you get large single target burst early on in the jungle, can do similar gank routes.
Minions have spawned.
Yet we have these 2 super passive supports, so creating kills in the bottom lane is actually really hard.
I love the ward though from RNG on the red buff to again see, okay, is Brox is starting there. Can we see maybe Waze moving right after and then have at least an idea if he's like early ganking this bottom side? Because again, with Soraka, Tristana, you really want to just push Vayne on the tower and just start taking a lot of damage, start dealing a lot of damage to the big objective.
Well, it worked in the previous game against the Sivajana for a fair amount of time. Brox's repeated ganks helping Fnatic out. So, we split the map. A little bit of a start for Reckless and Jesus. In the previous game, we were looking at how many minions they lost in that laning phase. It's literally picture perfect replication. But the laning phase will play out very, very differently now that Vayne is already being zoned away.
Yeah, well, RNG's not going to be ganking this lane early on. Unless they get enough poke that they can turret dive, because they're immediately going to have it shoved in, and that leaves very few windows to gank.
So Caps right here, after pushing the first wave, walks straight into the jungle to see if he could spot where Jarvan started. Returns to the lane now and takes a bit of damage to his face, but did not lose a whole lot from this.
Good combination there from Xiaohu. Scatter the weak, stunning Caps up against the wall. This is going to be a challenging matchup. But Caps, once again on that champion that can impact side lanes, doesn't have to worry about Trundle in the top lane. It's something that you guys talked about at length in picks and bans. Simplify that team comp and just make sure Reckless gets in.
Both top lanes though still gotta respect that it can be early gank pressure towards them. We have already now the Sejuani top side. MXG is moving to top side as well.
He is a little suspicious right now, but they have a chance to chain.
All right, there we go. That's a good twisted advance. Very good Bramble Smash comes down, and needs to use the flash to escape, but he does so.
Yeah, and it's about MLXG buying him time now so that the wave can crash without a fear of dive. You can also see Cinder coming up a little bit in case of this possibility. Looks like Letme's going to be okay.
Uzi's already been hitting the tower in the bottom lane, taking about 15% away from it. Caps takes another trade right there that actually goes in favor of Zhao Hu. Return gank though from Broxah and trying to counter gank in case MLXG is here.
Right, after all of our theorizing and discussion around this top lane, both junglers helping their respective top laners out. Right, minion wave is pretty sizable here, but I don't think you want to town out the Maokai, even without his flash. Very, very difficult setup, and instead, Soaz backs away.
Yeah, I think Broxah overstayed. There wasn't much to do in that top lane, but I do want to call attention to the mid lane, because in this matchup, whoever gets the push and the control of the mid lane can impact the bottom lane more, and that is something that Zhao Hu has been very good at so far this tournament. If you just look at the ways he's gotten his kills and assists pre-15 minutes, you wouldn't think he's a mid laner. He has 5 kills and assists in the bottom lane, 2 in the mid, and 1 in the top in the first 15 minutes of the game. Plus, in the team fights, if Zhao Hu has gotten that gold advantage, he will actually be the one killing Reckless along with Let Me. So Zhao Hu's performance in this game is paramount to RNG's success.
And in this early game, we might actually get some kills towards mid lane itself, because that's the advantage for Syndra, is she can match the push of this Talir, and then she can actually try and threaten to kill Cap straight up. Obviously, there's a heal now on Talir, so that needs to go down first. And MLXG might have to join as well, but not right now we see a gank topside. We talked about this. The top laners gotta be careful here because the junglers, they want blood.
Right, Rupture and Feral Scream's pretty good. Flash from Soaz blown to get out of that knock-up combination. And just to round out that mid lane discussion, Zhao Hu's already up 8 CS in that mid lane, but there is a wave in front of Caps as he's clearing out. Soaz feeling emboldened, knowing that the flag and drag was on cooldown, and Broxah
that gank.
going for that gank in the bottom lane. It's 5 minutes. Last time round it worked in favor. The flash Zephyr from Jizzes. Here's the Arctic Assault comes down from Ming. Gonna interrupt Uzi on the way up, and first blood picked up by Reckless. They just run RNG down.
And Officio, that's exactly how we expected this lane to play out. MLXG shows topside, stays topside, Soaz plays aggressive to keep him there. And Fnatic 100% ignore Uzi because they can. Both summoners and the kill.
And it's such a sloppy ward from RNG in the bottom lane. Look, it's just at the entrance of the brush here. They barely get any information on when Sejuani might be down here. And Ming, of course, pushed forward with Uzi here, and he ends up just dying to, again, another pretty easy gank setup for Fnatic against this Soraka. Obviously, you also need some help from your mid lane in terms of vision, but it's Fnatic setting up all the control wards to allow them actually moving down to bottom side.
That allows Fnatic to once again secure first blood. We talked about it in the previous game, Jack. We see it again this game. Fnatic early decision making on point. Well, what can they do more? It's an advantage, but it's an advantage in a uneven matchup, so this kind of just brings it to even.
It's exactly where they need to get their advantages, though, because Reckless's ability to get gold on himself and not get one shot is the deciding factor in this game. Also note, MLXG's build path, challenging Smite as well as Longsword. He's going Warrior Jarvan because it really will be all about them pressing all of their buttons on Reckless when he's in range and seeing whether or not that's enough damage to take him to 0.
And Jesse stands right next to Reckless, presses his ulti and says, nope, you're not killing this AD carry today. MLXG likes to do this as well, where he goes Black Cleaver then second and actually delays all these tank items until he gets a GA as like the first way. He's like, now I'm quote-unquote defensive, even though there's still quite some damage on that item.
So, gentlemen, we've seen now this is the third Vayne. Is Rage Blade first item into Phantom Dancer the item build on this patch? It's a discussion I'd like to have as the game plays out, because it's one that we've almost jokingly had off air because we don't really know just yet how good it is.
I like Rage Blade on Vayne here if you do not fall behind in the early game, because it does allow you, once you fully stack it, to deal so much extra damage, get even more silver bolts, and it is insane DPS on one item with also an Ardent Center next to you. So I really like the Rage Blade build.
The biggest struggle with Rage Blade Vayne is getting it stacked up in the first place, because everyone knows the synergy of only having to attack twice to get your silver bolts. But that's only after Ginsu's Rage is stacked, and that's after 6 auto attacks. So when he is at that point, it's huge. But think about who Reckless has to hit to get to that point if there's not a minion wave there. It's Let Me, and if he's in range to attack Let Me, that means Let Me's in range to root, and all the other CC can chain off of that.
But it fits in with everything you talked about before here, Chad, how RNG wants to try and burst down Reckless. Fnatic obviously want to prevent that and have longer fights, so they should have enough time to stack it up. And I want to highlight, though, RNG took control back on the bottom side. They now replace the Fnatic control wards with their own, making it much harder for Broxah to move down and gank. Gives a lot of safety to RNG to push.
And if you have that bottom lane as being your pressure release valve, you have to gank it more often. When they lost the vision control, they couldn't get it. And there's RNG with the first turret.
There we go, tower first blood secured. We've seen so many games and so many teams taking charge after taking the tower. Cataclysm comes down, Reckless gets a good condemn onto Uzi to buy some time. Silence locks Jezus into the pit, and that means he gets taken down. RNG with first tower and their first kill of the game.
And again, this starts with the control around mid lane that allows MLXG and Xiaohu to move into the jungle of Fnatic, and then MLXG can just follow his team down towards the bottom side. He knows Uzi and Ming are already killing the tower, and he can just go for an easy kill on the no-flash Janna. He has a great vision set up from RNG, and it's punishing once again that Fnatic can't really see anything on this bottom side.
Yeah, and it also punishes the previous gank. When Jezus flashed for Ming, that means Jezus no longer has flash, and they pretty much ignored Reckless with the initial engage until they trapped Jezus in the Cataclysm to finish it off.
Now you have this problem here as a Vayne, where you lost your tower. You are the slowest AD carry when it comes to pushing minion waves, because all you do is just single target shoot them. And it's like 3 hits on a caster before you actually kill it. So Tristana, what, 2 seconds? The wave is gone. Vayne, 7-8 seconds, and the wave is gone. And it just means that your team is forced to play so passive on the rest of the map because you're not applying pressure for quite a while.
And I do think this is interesting what RNG is doing, because you would expect the Tristana who kills the turret to immediately lane swap, run that cycle, get the second turret. But Uzi has already gone back towards the bottom lane to at least clean up this wave. So I want to see how RNG plays this, whether they try and continually regank Reckless now that they got his flash down, or if they just clear this wave before going top.
We have seen this a few times where teams stay and then push all the way for the tier 2 tower in the bot lane and then take over the bottom side jungle. Take away the red buff, take away whatever camps are in there, the big camps with lots of small minions in them, and just constantly threaten either tower diving on tier 2 tower or go mid and kill the mid lane.
Exactly, because it's a trade-off of pressure. If you send the Tristana up into the top side to take a turret, you're probably giving the bottom turret over to the Vayne and giving him that gold. So this is less immediate gold for RNG, but it's also less gold onto Reckless, so it's a trade-off I think they're willing to make.
They actually now ended up saying, we just wanted the wave here.
One shove.
It does set them behind a bit on how fast they can go to top lane after recalling. Reckless is still in the bottom lane, close to the turret, and can start dealing some damage to it. And Fnatic should be calling, there's a lane top Swords, run away!
Well, we'll find out if he can. Bramble Smash comes down, it's a 3-on-1.
Flash.
A little bit low, Cataclysm already comes down. Good
Xiaohu.
gotcha. Buy some time. Xiaohu, let's look for the scatter the weak, then he'll look for that stun. Soaz continues to buy some time, gets a silence, won't be enough, and Xiaohu takes 2 turret shots and escapes with his life.
But again, because RNG went bot lane first, killed the wave, and then recalled again, they actually allowed Fnatic to reach the turret first. So they're trying to now see if they can race against RNG. Caps here to try and delay the push.
All right, gets some damage down onto Ming. That threaded volley chunks him low, but Wish and Summoning Heal still available. Caps fancies his chances here, clearing out the wave. He's going to sidestep, got Heal and Flash available, buying some time. Uzi with the barrier survives.
It's alive!
Ming is the target. Caps is trying to get one back. Ming survives just a few seconds longer. He's escaped. MLXG now. Look at him down. Caps in a 1v3 manages to survive. Seismic shove gets away from his Uzi, manages to get to the plant. While this is going on, Reckless and Jezus, they're hammering away on the inner turret, and the top turret survives.
Huge play by Caps, and a big miss by Uzi, who could have flashed to finish the kill with an auto attack if he didn't shoot him away. He overestimated his damage up against Caps and ends up getting MLXG killed, and that buys even more time for Fnatic to push that bottom side.
What a hero play here from Caps. It looked crazy at first, like he's just walking in trying to kill the wave, but will die for it, and they get tower anyway. But let's see it once again. Knockback not hidden there onto Ming, but he still sits with this little goal in his mind of like, I need to kill the minions. I can save the tower then. Even if I die, I need to kill the minions. And he's so close to actually dying with the heal coming in from Caps here, baiting Uzi. And then he stays alive.
Uzi was hoping to execute with the ultimate, but Caps here at just the right time. That play could have easily gone either way and been a kill plus turret for the Uzi snowball, but it is not. Caps holds him off.
So important for Fnatic. They got the tower down bottom, they got that kill onto Caps. It's now 600 gold game. RNG, while they're still in the lead, Jezus has completed that Ardent Sensor already. Reckless picked up that recurve bow to go alongside his pickaxe. So Fnatic surviving by the skin of their teeth. And let's see whether or not they can do it again, Deficio, because MLXG is looking for a dive. And he's going to complete the teleports. Yeah, very good interrupt. MLXG actually channeled, though. from
still
him,
got a-
comes out from Reckless. Jez is forced to flash out of the Cataclysm. Yeah,
Oh, he's turning it.
Reckless trying to get one back. The seismic shove. That's another for Fnatic. Now the runaway as Caps gets pushed by Scats of the Week. The tower falls though. It's a kill for tower.
And you got to see there how difficult it's going to be for RNG to get the clean initiation right there. MLXG even buffers his flag and drag over top of the Jana Tornado, uses ultimate, still no kills. He ends up dying for it.
But I like the calls from RNG. It's just right now Fnatic are able to kind of outplay them in the small skirmishes and get some kills over to Reckless and Caps at the same time. Like, this call is good here. They have roaming priority from mid lane with the Syndra moving up first because she pushed the lane. And then MLXG is like, oh, I can force a flash. And then ult the Janna right after. But he doesn't get the flash because the knock up here is not enough to actually get Jess away from him. And then suddenly, he ends up dying.
Yeah, Soaz doesn't even have to leave the lane as well, keeps his farm up. So as far as worst case versus best case scenario in the early game, this is close to that best case for Fnatic. They lost the turret, but they've gotten 1 kill and 1 assist over Reckless. He's got 2 more CS than Uzi until Uzi clears this wave, but they're looking pretty comfortable based on their earlier strategy.
Well, that's a good sign for Fnatic as we're getting past this 15-minute mark. And now we need to just see this Warrior enchant MLXG and whether or not he's going to burst him down, because look at the itemization. 1 fully completed across the board for RNG. Fnatic do not want to fight him just yet.
The whole like AD, the Warrior, Black Cleaver, Jarvan in the late game can struggle to actually burst down targets through all the shields and the healing. But in the mid game, it is so strong if you actually connect your combo and that big ulti that can deal damage to so many people at the same time. We're getting fighting here.
Soaz has no TP. He's slowly walking up from the bottom lane.
Very, very slowly. Weaver's Wall will cut off Xiaohu and Let Me. Nature's Grasp gonna fly all the way along. That does get a double root. Equinox will hold Caps in place for just a moment or two longer. By the way, Rift Herald is just about to get killed, secured by RNG. They're going to pick up the buff, and
they're not going to get it.
Some of these flashes to get away, and they managed to make it over the wall. Chase comes down. Let Me forced to flash away from the rupture. Did they manage to pick up the buff? I don't think they did. There it is right in front of me.
Oh, MLXG, he wants it. He's still around.
Capture the flag. Can they defend the buff right now?
Oh, he wants to get in there.
He's got flash. Come on, flag and drag in, pick it up, and flash out.
Wants it.
That would be pretty
Oh,
spicy.
he can go right now.
There we go. He's going to get it.
Ah, you forgot the flags, Fnatic.
All right, there we go. Exactly as predicted. Flag and drag. Is it worth the flash? I guess we'll find out. If it takes down the tower,
Yeah.
RNG, they got challenged, stared down Fnatic, and they got away with the buff.
We got 3 flashes right there from RNG used. Fnatic are actually with the 4 members because of the good wall here from Caps, kind of delaying all 5 members of RNG getting close enough to start the fight. They actually managed to at least force summoner spells. Now let's see if this Rift Herald can be used to get a tower. Mid lane tower is always one of the big objectives you're looking for.
And of course, Ming being flashless on that Soraka will be a juicy flank target if Brox or Soaz can find an opportunity in. But it's going to be difficult for them. 2-man stack in the mid lane. There's support for RNG coming to defend, and Fnatic don't overstay and they don't overpush.
And you just mentioned again Ming without the flash here. I want to then turn it over to Brox because a lot of eyes will be on him, specifically on this Sejuani to start fights. And it's been a big weakness for Broxer when it comes to actually being the main engage on your team. There's been times where he's hesitating. He doesn't maybe feel like he can actually go for a big flash play or anything. And the fact that he's now on main engage and he needs to try and actually catch people like this Soraka here, it's a lot of pressure on still a very young guy.
Yeah, and it's a matter of will Fnatic just play disengage as well, because that could still be an option whenever RNG tries to get the engage, even just using Sejuani as some type of disruptor, because this is one of the power spike moments for Reckless's Vayne. He has the Rage Blade. He also has maxed Silver Bolt. So if he stacks up, that means he's getting that % health true damage every 2 hits on top of the already generous base damages of that Vayne.
Well, a good wall here just to defend. Cap's actually buying a lot of time with his Talia.
Yeah, I've been fairly impressed. His defensive walls in 1 and 2 of the series have worked out. It's not going to stop Heraldina from ramming into that outer turret. While it won't be a kill yet, that is a lot of damage and a lot of control over to RNG, which allows Uzi and Ming and the rest of the squad actually to take this Cloud Drake. There's no contest yet. The seismic shove will not find the target.
So Fnatic have invested everything on top side. All the wards, everything is top side. They need to respect they don't know what's happening in their own jungle. So when they're pushing forward now, they open themselves up to a potential flank. Smart play here though, and just backing away. Go straight towards the top side again. Don't risk a big engage from MLXG and Let Me.
Yeah, and something that RNG has really done well and was displayed right here is their ability to pick the right fights. They're very rarely picking the wrong fight. So they have no vision on the top side of the jungle right there. And instead of going all the way up to force a fight on Fnatic, who's pushed up mid, they take safe recalls into the jungle, reset, and now they go with a good siege into the mid turret.
All right, remember this tower got chunked down so low earlier.
Walk versus
Warning will buy some time. Ming is the target who is flashless. Broxah with all the pressure on him finds the target. The tower's still scared. Soaz teleports in behind. I didn't even see that happen. Uzi and Ming are down and Fnatic are sieging mid.
And that Raptor camp is Sejuani's playhouse when you're trying to siege that turret. Always over the wall to get that engaged. Broxah pulls it off.
Also, Jess is right there with the shield on the turret. Meant that Uzi stayed around to try and finish it. He couldn't actually do it, and RNG ended up overstaying. They got punished for it. It's another kill over to the Vayne.
Didn't even see that TP from Soaz shutting down Uzi. 19 minutes in, Fnatic will take the gold lead, the tower lead, and the kill lead. Only Dragons in favor of Royal Never Give Up. But they still have an unenviable task of dealing with RNG in the mid game.
But it is the same setup now where it's Caps in the mid lane. It's, of course, Reckless and Jessus in the side lane. Let's see the play. There's the ward he's TPing onto. Look at the shield coming in here to save the tower. So RNG is staying around to try and finish it, and that's when we get the big engage.
It's that extra little bit of greed from RNG. That was their Achilles heel when they lose, but they have been able to avoid it for so much of this Worlds. It cost them there, but it's mainly with Fnatic knowing exactly when to go for that engage and getting it.
Tower does fall eventually, gentlemen, as we roll over. And for Fnatic, now the carries. It's all about them. 2-0-2 for Caps, 2-0-2 for Reckless. And when they're playing well, that's when they're winning games.
Exactly, and we put so much emphasis on the Vayne, on Reckless. Can he hyperscale? Can he carry? But really, this team doesn't succeed unless they are both carry. You can see that damage percentage. Reckless, even when they were winning, actually had a 28% damage percentage rather than the 41% in week 1 when they'd lost all their games. So the fact that Caps is 2-0-2 on Taliyah as well diversifies their threat. So when everything is thrown into Reckless, Caps can still do work as well, which puts Fnatic in an enviable position.
Right here, we actually saw another engage.
Let's see what happens. There's the flash away from Caps. Imalexi is just obliterated because he's not tanky.
You have to remember, it is a very squishy Jarvan jumping in here.
Do they Baron?
They have Cho'Gath. There's no feast just yet from him.
I think it is absolutely worth posturing around the area. They need to get control, and then Broxah has flash and ultimate. They're going for Xiaohu.
Xiaohu forced to flash, but he's out of position. Remember, he's got no unleashed power. Seismic Shove is stepped away from, and the Glacial Prison will buy some time, as will the Wish. Xiaohu cannot run away, and he pushed far too forward, far too quickly.
Fnatic are finding some very good fights, and RNG not really reacting properly here. They tried to push up the mid lane to then maybe move into River in case Baron was started, but then there's a quick turnaround from Fnatic to get another kill.
Individual positioning mistakes on the side of RNG. Some very good punishes. Remember, Soaz surviving that top lane dive for so on Caps, defending the tower, and now they're finding these kills 7-2 up. It's 2,000 gold, and with Hurricane Rageblade, Reckless has some additional wave clear.
And I think it's really interesting. You do not proc Silver Bolts with Hurricane, but you do shove the waves much faster, so that's how much importance they're putting on wave clear in this game.
Exactly. He actually went back and he bought the Phantom Dancer first, but then he sold it again, undid it, and said, oh, actually, no, I need Hurricane here. I need to be able to shove waves, because again, Reckless lives in the side lanes. That's where he gets all his farm while we have Caps defending mid. If he's able to push out his side lane and then join his team, he's going to be much stronger, because again, he's constantly getting farm, and it's hard to deal with for RNG because they can't really stop all these lanes from pushing.
All right, look at the itemization. Xiaohu, Banshee's Belmorel, and Namikon. Uzi's working towards that Infinity Edge, but does not have it yet. And Caps on your screen, Leandri's Torment and that Morello's. He's going to be combining with Soaz in just a moment. See if they can use that Weaver's Wall, but maybe it's just going to get a flash if they decide to engage.
Yeah, important to highlight that Let Me still sits with the defensive summoner. He's trying to play it very safe, not seeing where Taliyah or Sejuani is on the map.
It's just going to allow Fnatic some time to set up around Dragon. It's a minute until Infernal. We're well into the mid-game, and RNG have got vision all around this Baron. Can't quite see how many Fnatic wards there are, but there's a few littered around, so they know that RNG aren't starting or threatening it yet.
Always important to sweep outside of the Baron pit as well. Get a control ward in the pit, sweep outside, because a lot of teams plug in these small wards just around the corner of the Baron pit itself, and then they can see if you're actually starting it, because one of your members is standing outside and hitting the Baron itself. And Broxah, he's a good guy, sweeps it, gets rid of it.
And this is the most control we've seen Fnatic have this series, with the control wards they have outside the pit right now, and with the Infernal Dragon spawning very shortly. We have to see how they play around it. It's also some power spikes for RNG. Black Cleaver completed, Banshee's Veil completed. There's still a lot of burst damage that RNG can throw onto Reckless, who hasn't gone for QSS yet. Still a chance he gets locked down in these team fights, but if they don't, Fnatic can take so much control with the next team fight.
Right, and they should only be able to burst Reckless if Jesus is not there and ready to defend him. There's the shield from him, there's the big ulti from the Janna. He's no flash at the moment, so RNG can actually change and just say, you know what, kill Jesus first. If you go full attack damage Jarvan, you gotta burst someone down.
Let's see if that Black Cleaver helps out at all. Support coming from Ming and Uzi. Soaz continues to chase forward and backs away the moment he sees the reinforcements.
Yeah, Reckless is also on Infernal Drake. So it was all a ruse in that sense. They did go for a kill. Actually a little bit fortunate that RNG didn't have any vision of Reckless and know that it was a 4v5. With it, no vision though, good play for Fnatic.
Yeah, just like we criticized the vision, the last game from Fnatic, we gotta praise it now. They have actually taken over the river completely. They are denying RNG any wards on the map, except for this one little ward just around the Baron Pit, but it is very far up the river.
Now in the previous game, it felt a lot more even. RNG had those early game tower plays. They had some pressure moves across the map. They tried to do the same now, and Fnatic have outplayed it, you know? Found some picks, found some kills. I know RNG turned this around. Is it really just as simple as finding kill caps or Reckless and then take a big objective? And that only really comes from vision.
I mean, exactly. You can say the outcome would be to kill the carries, but you have to get vision control somehow, and that's just so difficult for RNG to do, because when looking at the draft and seeing the Janna Vayne lane against a Triss Soraka, you think, all right, this is at least 3 turrets to 1 at the start of the game. But we're 3 turrets to 3 now, 25 minutes in, because Fnatic was able to punish RNG whenever RNG was going for the turrets, thanks to Broxa finding the initiation time and time again, which makes it really difficult for RNG, because they don't win the team fights now, so they can't get the vision.
And that's why it's so interesting that RNG in the early game, again, do not value getting a lot of vision around the bottom side, but instead go top lane. They actually gave Fnatic the full control down there, so Broxa found a way in for an easy gank and picked up that kill, delayed the game a little bit. Very important though, Fnatic have been winning skirmishes.
Yeah.
A lot of moments where RNG actually made a good call, but then they couldn't finish the Talia, couldn't finish the Vayne or the Janna, and they end up having to give a kill back in return. And it's given quite some gold and time over to Fnatic.
It really is. And you see those items continue to spike. QSS now picked up for Reckless. Gonna try to deal with some of that CC. Remember the Silver Bolt Rageblade combination. It's gonna be melting through Baron, especially with Feast and Smite.
And if they fight, he's gonna be max stacks on Rageblade as well.
All right, so max stacked out. If RNG decides to engage, Equinox to buy some time. Easily secured with the Feast. The Weaver's Wall closes RNG out, and Guangzhou is silent as RNG are falling further behind.
It's a good, clean call here from Fnatic side, and it's the same setup again we keep seeing. Reckless pushes out the top side, Caps pushes out the mid lane. RNG don't have a winning lane at the moment. They don't have anywhere they're actually able to apply pressure. Because if MLXG is trying to go mid, he needs Caps to overextend first to actually kill him. If he doesn't do that, suddenly Fnatic have multiple members that can roam into mid lane and just stop this Jarvan from doing anything. And it's so difficult for RNG because they lost so many of the early fights. They didn't manage to snowball the Tristana Soraka lane.
There's no room for Fnatic now to make mistakes if they play this 3-1-1 that Deficio set up in the previous game, how they like to play around the map, especially with the Vayne and this Cho'Gath. But when you open yourself up to a Maokai Jarvan engage, because you're split, it can go pear-shaped real quick on the Fnatic side. So let's see how they play the map.
There is a chance from that, but this is what Fnatic is practiced with as well when they were tearing through the EULCS regular season. The champion picks were much different, but ultimately they did love to play with Reckless in his side lane, and now Vayne is probably the best duelist as far as AD carries go. So unless RNG throws the house at Reckless, he probably wins those fights.
While the house has been thrown, it was at Caps. You can see him low on HP, and he used his flash to escape. This is going to open up more towers because there's a lower threat to engage.
That's kind of what we were mentioning before here, how like mid lane is where RNG are trying to do something, but it's so hard because it requires Caps to completely overextend. Now, yes, he used the flash, so he needs to play even safer, but RNG did not get a kill from this one. They have to re-gank the mid laner, and Fnatic should know this will happen, and Caps just do not step too far forward.
And MLXG can't be the initiation for RNG right now. He fell too far behind in this game. They go for Uzi.
Wow, he's being chunked down and not burst just yet. Manages to rocket jump to safety and has used their flash. But that means he's not yet to defend.
Yeah, they have Reckless pushing that bottom side, and there's just not enough damage to push him off the turret.
There's not. Howling Gale pops the Banshee's Veil for Xiaohu, but there's no follow-up from Fnatic. Reckless continues to push this wave in. It's a minute 50 left on Baron. Soaz is now sieging in the top lane. This is 3-4 turrets that are starting to fall over in favor of Fnatic.
As soon as you lose one member or that member is forced back in base, then you can't defend at all because all 3 lanes with Baron buff minions are just constantly pushing towards you.
And Brox's engages have been good. On the front line, finding the key targets. It was Ming on that mid-tower defense earlier. And it was Uzi getting his summoners, and that's allowing these towers to get pressured and sieged by the Fnatic roster.
And we are way past the stage of the game where Vayne is risky and tough to play or hard to play, because now with the Hurricane
And the Infinity Edge.
and Infinity Edge for even more damage, but again with the Hurricane, he's able to really push the side lane so fast that they don't have to wait for him. They don't have to be like, oh my god, Rekt is always falling behind. Let's give him another 10 seconds before he's doing anything. No, he's instantly just killing this wave, then moving forward.
Yeah, and they've gained this advantage from the split push, but I feel like for Fnatic, when they win this game, it's Infernal Drake #2, it's Baron #2, and then they just go. Reckless is at such a point with a Knight's Vow on Broxa, with the front line in Cho'Gath, and with a Janna who has Sense and Redemption, that they can actually win that straight-up team fight. The question is, what's the safer play for Fnatic, and how do they choose? Do they group and risk having him get picked off, or do they spread out and risk RNG getting a pick with their pluritude of engagements?
Well, we're going to find out shortly. You talked about finding the pick, MLXG. He's been sitting on that Black Cleaver and Warrior Enchant for a little while. He's got himself a cloth armor.
He's gonna get the GA. That'll take some time.
That'll help out ever so slightly, but the main point being, at 30 minutes into the game and down 7,500 gold, that Jarvan did not work out in RNG's favor. Remember, it was Tristana, Jarvan, first rotation red side for RNG. They gave that Sejuani over, and Broxa and the rest of Fnatic have used it exquisitely.
And it was because they banned Karma last. Yeah. Trying to be like, ha ha ha, if you do not pick the Janna, we will grab it, and we think this is your quote-unquote counter pick to it. We get rid of it, we force you to take Janna again, and we get the Tristana. But the fact that Sejuani was still open meant that Fnatic got a fine trade in the jungle.
Yeah, it's MLXG putting more priority on Jarvan than Sejuani, and that hasn't shown through in this game. And it's also Reckless having that Vayne in his pocket. Uzi was the first one to pull it out this tournament into Tristana. We saw Bang try and do it yesterday into Tristana as well. And then Reckless saw something in the matchup that said, at least in the late game, we can pull it off. But they got shoved in the early game. It was just a matter of keeping his CS up, getting the mid-game turret push going, and the Hurricane, I think, is also the icing on the cake to get that wave push going.
Yeah, and the big thing in the late game between Vayne and Tristana is they're both trying to do the same thing, kill the tank right in front of them. They're both dealing single target damage, but Vayne is dealing a lot more damage to the tanks. So she can actually kill the front line before Tristana can do it. And when the big tank dies, there's no protection for your backline anymore, and then everyone just start dying.
Yeah, and at this point as well, like late game Vayne is just goofy. You saw that tumble crit hit a minion for 1,150.
Goofy is a great thing or bad thing?
It's great if you're Vayne, because you get to kill the tanks with true damage and then do 1,000 health crits on the squishies. So
sounds pretty goofy.
Reckless is in an incredibly good spot right now on Vayne.
You have to simplify the language when you cast with the Dane.
I'm saying goofy can mean a lot.
What I also like is,
good.
if you look at the itemization as well, not only Vayne and her kit and the build, but then you've got the Knight's Vow, you've got a Janna, you've got Ardent Sensor as well, and literally 3 champions also itemizing to buff that single damage source up while simultaneously protecting Reckless and Vayne. 2 Weaver's Walls have been used by Caps in the last few minutes. The first try shut out Xiaohu, it didn't work. This time they get a flash from Let Me, but I'd like to see that used on the inhibitor turret. Use it to try and get more chip down.
Yeah, I think getting the flash is one nice thing, because that's one of the main ways that RNG is going to try and initiate, and it's really all about this next Baron that's in 45 seconds. This is also an inflection point in the series for Fnatic. We've had games in group stage where Reckless was insanely far ahead. Twitch against IM2 comes to mind, where they didn't win and then seemed to fall apart in the later stages of this week. If they don't close this game out, they probably lose the series 3-0 based on the mentality shift that would happen. But if they do, they put themselves in a commanding position and tied with the series. All about the Baron and all about the way they play from.
That's why it's good they're playing it safe now. Why they're not just rushing down and using a Talia all to try and secure a turret, because they have a Cho'Gath here to try and guarantee the Baron pickup for themselves. And then once again can push multiple lanes in with these buffed up minions. Reckless and the rest of Fnatic, all about getting vision of RNG. You cannot be surprised now by some crazy flank. There's not even a flash in the enemy Maokai, so the engage from RNG should be very hard to pull off.
Crowd can feel it, the RNG chants erupt. MLXG, by the way, has got himself a BF sword, some additional burst. Keep your eyes on Reckless on the flank. 5 members of RNG in the pit. Baron is MLXG takes it down, and Fnatic get no kills.
Unreal steal by MLXG. Cho'Gath Sejuani, the second game Fnatic has had with Cho'Gath where they do not secure the Baron.
Is that what Tilt is made of? We will find out. RNG have the tools necessary to stall right now.
It's the recipe for Tilt. It's just a matter of now that it's in the oven, whether or not it comes out cooked. Because this game, watch this, Deficio, you just watch this in slow motion. Double smite, I believe, come through at 1800.
And it's at 1,000 HP, where Soaz is trying to go in with his feast.
That was, so it was at 1800, something hit it for 700, and then MLXG smoked. Because there was no smite from Broxa and no feast from Soaz. Technically, the feast could have hit from 1,000, but the frame it hit 1,000,
exactly.
It was dead.
Exactly. Like, he's looking at the exact same number, saying, okay, just close to 1,000, I'm going to feast it. And then when the smite comes in at the same time and it actually kills it, then it's really hard to be like, it's really hard to put any blame on Soaz when it is actually close to 1,000.
You're opting into that 50-50. Let's call it 60-40.
Yeah, it should be a 50-50.
Let's call it 60-40, but it is still a timing issue.
The problem for me is that you're not denying the Jarvan, or trying to at least deny him. You have Monsoon to try and knock him away before he can flash into the pit. You have knockback from Talia.
It's happening. RNG with Baron are emboldened, and they take their 4th tower of the game in the middle lane.
MLXG didn't even die when he goes in for that Baron steal. That's the miraculous part about that. He's a squishy Jarvan, and you got a max stack Rageblade Vayne in that pit, so potentially a huge swing in the game. Fnatic then spread out as RNG makes that first push, and they get that first turret.
But what we normally see is that you try and time it so that you say feast and smite at the same time, so you can do it above 1,000 HP. But MLG just got in there and literally hit it perfectly. Again, the fact he was allowed entrance, he EQ'd into the pit. There's so many knockbacks on the side of Fnatic to deny that from happening. And he should never get in there in the first place. They even had a ward on it.
MLXG wants a fight.
MLXG's got himself a Guardian Angel after that last Baron secure. By the way, looking at MLXG, Xiaohu and Ming, none of them have upgraded their boots yet. They need as much combat power as possible. Baron buff is going to help out, and Jesus takes a gigantic crit to the face.
But that's double ults burned by Fnatic. Reckless no longer has the final hour for the team fights. That actually gives RNG a lot of confidence when going through on this next play. We're going to have to replay that Baron again and again and again if that ends up being the deciding factor in this game, because Fnatic has it in the back of their minds that that Baron should have been theirs. When you go for Baron with the Cho'Gath, you expect to get it. Whether or not the scenario was different and it was burst from 1,000, it's all about moving past it from that point forward.
It's not the first time that we've seen that happen. I don't expect it to be the last. Elder Dragon is up in 3 seconds. The minion wave seemed to be pushing in favor of Fnatic, although Letme's trying to deal with the top one. Right, RNG barreling down mid, Fnatic on Elder.
It's going to be gone. They're going to try this one more time, but there's no vision. This time the Feast can get it.
And this time they deny MLXG as well. Do not let him even close to this Dragon Pit. So double Infernal Elder Drake for Fnatic. They still haven't lost anything in their base, but RNG are looking towards mid.
But I love that call from Fnatic, undeterred by the last secure going wrong, knowing the Elder is important with the double Infernal to stop the Baron push of RNG, and buying time for that Baron power play to be fairly irrelevant. Fnatic now have double Infernal and the Elder.
I think it's very important to note that Baron for RNG was a stalling Baron. It did not necessarily give them control of the map. It did not necessarily even out their game. They're still 6,000 gold down. So it's still a huge uphill battle for RNG.
Yeah, and that's why it's not the end of the world for Fnatic, because their late game is still fantastic. Like, they have the double Infernal Drake, they have the Vayne, who's currently sitting on 4 fully completed items and a QSS. So they're still looking to take the next team fight and win the game. It just sucks for them they didn't have a Baron buff to do it with.
That does suck when you misplay it, or mistime it, or it'll come out in the wash, I suppose. A little too early to tell. Right, Weaver's Wall is up for Caps. I'm looking down the flashes on the Fnatic side. Only Jez's unavailable. MLXG on the other side is the one without the ability to flash in or out. Weaver's Wall maybe a little early. The minions did not quite make their way up. Xiaohu with that death cap Void Staff doing a lot of work to wave clear.
Yeah, and that's a lot of damage threat on a level 18 Syndra against Reckless's Vayne. The QSS, his sole source of magic damage, and not quite the locket on Broxa yet, because the damage from the Syndra ultimate does somewhat come over time. They can shield with the Janna, hope the QSS, and now it is our Mercurial Scimitar, does enough from a magic resist perspective, but that locket's going to be really important as well to try and keep them alive.
The fact that RNG are just holding on here, just hoping for one big team fight they can win to turn this around. They're actually going towards Soaz now. Xiaohu is here as well in the bottom lane.
All right, stun lands onto Soaz. He's still got that Gargoyle Stone Plate to tag if he needs to.
Real hard to
Gonna
kill.
throw that one out. There comes the Unleashed Power. Yet another stun. Soaz continues to run away. 1,000 HP. Flashes over
it's
the
a blast
wall.
cone.
Gets the blast cone out. Sends Emlek shield away. Soaz still not down. Sidestep. Scatter. The weak falls short.
Classic
Soaz escapes. And he didn't even need teleport this time round.
He's always doing it. He ends up pushing up a lane. He's about to get caught. Everyone thinks he's dead, and then he finds a way out. Takes the blast cone to safety. Had to use the flash though, which is a big one for him in future fights if he's flashing onto the back line of RNG. But for now, just feast the tank in front of you and let Reckless do the rest.
Yeah, and it's all about prepping for that next Baron in 1 minute. Ultimately, all of the R buttons for RNG will be back up before that happened, and they didn't burn any summoner spells. So the cost is still 2 summoner spells for Fnatic.
But Fnatic must have learned now from the last Baron here. Try and deny MLXG from getting into the pit, at least force him to flash into that pit if he actually needs to try and steal it. Also, the same thing is, because MLXG got into that pit, and actually I think with his ult, he might potentially have forced Soaz out of range for his feast, or at least done something that he couldn't actually go straight for. But again, it's on Fnatic to obviously smite feast earlier and just combine the two.
There are tools to make that safer as we go past 40 minutes very, very shortly in a game that Fnatic looked in such control of. Now they're on the risk of losing some control. There's that ward RNG have placed outside the Baron pit. Officio's touched on sweeping outside the pits. So RNG happy to keep stalling, keep playing for time. Get late, get more damage, more armor, more tankiness for this squad. And then see if they can out-team fight.
Hey, they got that ward on the outside. This makes it even more difficult for RNG to check. They don't even have waves in great pushing positions right here. And so much of it would be, can RNG actually get and engage onto Fnatic? They're going for Xiaohu.
Righteous Glory doesn't get them in range. Banshee's Veil needs to be popped, and no flash for Soaz. Uzi, by the way, quietly gaining power. Got that Mercurial to back up his 5 damage item build, and he's terrifying right now.
Exactly. The full item 80 carries being on both sides take away a little bit from Fnatic's ability to just brute force a Baron, because even though they should be able to secure it with the Cho'Gath and the Vayne, that didn't happen last time. And then the shored up teamfight win isn't too sure when you have the Deathcap Void Staff Syndra as well as the 6 item Tristan.
We have to see how MLXG team fights here. He likes to find good flanks and then surprise the enemy with a quick engage and get some burst down on Caps or on Reckless. At the moment here, there's flash on 4 members on Fnatic. Only Soaz missing it. So he's just going to sit in the front here and be a threat against the tanks as well.
Yeah, well, Soaz went bottom to try and prep the wave for the split push. Does have teleport, but that gives RNG time to get vision control of the Baron area.
It looks like top wave is pushing towards Fnatic heavily in favor of Royal Never Give Up, and RNG
They're going to force this.
using Baron to force Fnatic's hand. Now Fnatic all of a sudden, they have to steal this one away.
I don't think they have time. Let me compete with his ultimate, and they might be able to stop him from getting in the pit.
Weaver's Wall comes down. Baron already secured. That's the second of the game for RNG. Weaver's Wall has locked him out. Caps takes a big chunk from that Dark Sphere. On the back end, Brox is now looking for engage. He's going to be taking a 5 members. Can he survive? No! He gets chucked down. Now it's a 5v4 redemption. A little late to the party in Fnatic. Lose Baron, lose Broxer, and they're losing control.
And just like in game 1, we see RNG late game with some really good calls here. Fnatic lost the control of the mid lane, and then RNG said, we can rush down this big objective. Fnatic reacting too late against it after they lost the mid lane control, and they're not even able to contest for it.
It's a Mountain Drake on RNG. They took that 10 minutes into the game. 30 minutes later, it pays off by having Fnatic underestimate the burst damage, and then The haphazard collapse by the rest of Fnatic. Carry's not in position. Reckless does 0 damage in that engagement. If Fnatic loses this, it would be a collapse. They had so much control before that first Baron play, but now RNG may even be back in the driver's seat.
And they know this in-game already. There's so much pressure on Fnatic to actually win this game. They had a huge advantage. They had everything they needed. About to get that second Baron off the game, but then MLXG steals it away from them. Delays the game as well. They still haven't been able to get into the base of RNG.
And Xiaohu also just hit max items, so that 5,000 gold lead is less and less relevant when both carries are on 6 items.
And we've not really had a big fight where Reckless could actually use this 5-item Vayne to try and carry his team. He's been sitting on 2-0-2 for a long time now, simply because it's all about pushing against each other, and then you wait for one small mistake and you try and get the Baron.
Well, let's see where the mistake comes in. The focus seems to be Let Me. We need to follow Reckless. Still untouched. MLXG's holding on to that Cataclysm. Let Me is able to escape. MLXG forced to escape the fight. Unleash power, not yet used by Xiaohu. He's looking for a juicy, squishy target, and the tension continues to build.
3 shots by Reckless took MLXG to half health, but now the final hour is down on Vayne, and MLXG has been healed up by the Soraka. The supports are trading heals and trading ultimates. It's a reset of the fight, but no ultimate on Vayne this time makes Fnatic far less threat.
And there's no Sipper for that wave clear. Baron-empowered minions making Fnatic's life difficult. Fnatic is now forced to back away. Reckless.
A little bit of damage.
GA is going to get popped on the side of MLXG. Rupture goes down. So is forced to run for his life. MLXG, he's going to get taken down by Cap, who flashes over on the side lane. So far, it's 1-for-1. Uzi gets the shutdown, gets the double kill. It's now a 4-on-3 with 60-second death timers.
He's gonna push for the tower here. MLXG with the GA. The timing was just off here from Cap, so he didn't actually kill him as soon as he came back to life, and he had to flash over, allowing Uzi to jump him and get another kill.
Right, Brox has got his ultimate available if he can somehow find a target, but Redemption for Ming makes that so difficult. Fnatic lose their inhibitor.
But where's the ultimate gonna follow up on? Reckless would have to walk towards 4 people to make this fight happen. RNG's pushing for a win!
It's 30-second death timers. The Glacial Prison comes down. Uzi gets chunked. He manages to escape. Summoning heal buys some time. Broxo, Reckless, and Chances trying to do the unthinkable. Uzi has healed himself back to full life.
Xiaohu has ultimate. He's saving it for when Reckless gets in range.
10 seconds and Nexus. Enjoy. The Nexus is the target. Uzi, Ming, RNG. They haven't done it back. Fnatic are down 0-2.
In front of the home crowd, RNG come back from the dead in this game. 10,000 gold down, 6-item Vayne, Cho'Gath forcing the Baron, MLXG useless for most of the game. And Fnatic knows this field. This has so many parallels to the first Immortals game in the first week of group stage.
So many things had to go wrong for Fnatic and right for RNG to turn this game around, and now the crowd is behind them again.
The chants, the cheers, the drama. That Baron call. I asked the question, is that what Tilt is made of? We'll find out in the next game, because Fnatic, after nearly a 10,000 gold lead, after absolute map control,
They got an Elder Drake though.
wandered the lead.
Yes, they lost the Baron. They picked up an Elder Drake right after with this super fed Vayne, but they couldn't find a team fight. Talia wall they try and use on the tower is not timed with the minion wave, so they don't actually get into the base of RNG. So many things ended up going wrong for Fnatic and in favor of Royal Never Give Up.
If you wrote this stuff, you would say it was unrealistic. The Cho'Gath not getting the feast, and yes, we watched it again, and there were definite reasons why that didn't go through. It's more about not getting MLXG out of the pit from that Baron steal, but then even after that fact, Fnatic was still in control. It's just the fact that I think the threat level of the Syndra and the Trist got to a point that Reckless could no longer be effective with his Vayne if we think about, you know, the mechanics behind the story of the collapse.
But then there's also these tiny mechanical things, like the very last team fight. MLXG in GA comes back to life, and Caps misses his combo on him, so he has to flash the wall to kill him. That allows Uzi to kill the Talia, and suddenly RNG can finish the game.
Especially when at the beginning of the game it was the mechanical outplays that got Fnatic their lead. At the end, they lost, and we're going to send it to Dash and the analysts to get their thoughts on Game 2.
Thank you very much. Quick shot. Exasperated faces for both of our color commentators there as they try and make sense of how RNG come back there. But if there were any questions about momentum and what it might do to this series as a whole, RNG with a comeback victory, now sitting at 2-0 over Fnatic. Momentum is definitely in their favor.
And you could see it on Soaz's face as we went to the replay and the Cho'Gath ultimate didn't come through for that Baron. That's a heartbreaker. That's a tilter if there ever was.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, but before we get to that tilter, let's recall back to what we were talking about before this game. What would Fnatic do in Champion Select to respond to RNG? We threw out some ideas. None of those ideas were vain, though.
Yeah, speaking of tilt, as soon as that Vayne was locked in, I was tilted. I was like, please no, you just got drafted. Like, you just had a terrible lane phase, and then you just drafted yourself into an even worse one. Like, Janna comes through, we already know that the Soraka counter is going to come through, and then they just grab the Vayne. It's like, well, I guess we're losing tower at 8:05. That's when they lost the tower.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really understand the Vayne pick. Yes, I think it was kind of working out, you could say, but it's so hard, I feel like, for Vayne to actually get involved. In the early game, you're essentially completely giving up the push. You're accepting that in an uninterrupted lane, you're going to lose your turret. Even in this interrupted lane, they still lost their turret. And then when you look at the later stages of the game, people talk about Vayne as this hyper-scaling champion. I feel like it's somewhat of a fallacy because you can't actually position it to actually get all these auto attacks off, whereas some of the other champions like Tristana, who has the long range, can. When you're against a Maokai and a Syndra, you can't just tumble forward into them and try to get all this DPS out. So we just saw the Vayne not really paying off.
Maxlor, thoughts?
Well, it was kind of sad to see that the mid laner of Fnatic ended up, like, let's say, being the dog and picking a champion that had full priority just to help Vayne lane. But even after the Sejuani gank bot, it didn't change the priority at all, and they still lost the tower. So it was just really not worth the pick.
As well, we talked about maybe the importance of the Tristana, the way it's played into the other best-of-5 series. Once again, the power pick here in terms of taking down the turrets. Yes, the Sejuani gets that early gank off for Broxah. Deja vu in the bot lane. This time around, though, RNG's got the response, taking the turret.
And the thing about Tristana is it's just such a huge tempo shift. Yes, they're overextended again. Yes, the vision hasn't changed for RNG. You can see the corner on your screen right now, that little dinky board. That's not ever going to catch anything. And RNG need to figure that out and to move that forward more. Otherwise, Broxah's just going to have a field day. But it's breaking this tower. It's then rotating up into the top side, breaking that one, grabbing Rift Herald. In fact, RNG were really stalled up when Uzi couldn't kill Caps. That's what really was the first speed bump for Fnatic.
I mean, that said, from this game state, things are looking good for RNG, and so I do want to, one, recognize that, two, figure out where things started to go wrong for RNG within the mid-game.
Well, honestly, it was a free win for RNG if they just played it properly. However, MLXG chose to go Red Smite Warrior, which is a really risky approach because you don't have wards for your team. Your support is Ardent Sensor, so he hasn't got wards for his team, so all your plays are going to be coin flip if MLXG isn't living in the enemy jungle. And he was, but he was too over-aggressive at times and died for it, and so therefore Fnatic was able to come back. And then there was that Rift Herald, man. That Rift Herald was...
Let's talk about the Rift Herald. I mean, that was some craziness, for sure.
Yeah, and we can actually just roll the clip of the Rift Herald because this is something that you were talking a lot about, the investment into this, and not just about the fact that, yes, RNG did eventually get it, but how much they had to expend to actually get the Rift Herald.
Yeah, so RNG used their Maokai's tempo to come from bot all the way to this Rift Herald. And as you can see, RNG just have to like run for their life. Soraka used flash and Maokai has to flash away, so there's like, everything just went wrong, right? And now Soraka has no flash, so Sejuani just easily engages and Soraka's dead.
And this is what I was talking about, at the top of the day. It's that Fnatic and RNG are stylistically so similar that they create leads through team fights. It's not this beautiful orchestrated, macro game where it's about the vision control and the wave setup. It's really just about the team fights. And yeah, there are, these instances where they find tempo and they pull the Maokai over when they think that they have the upper hand on taking the Rift Herald, but it falls apart so quickly if they're not on top of the ball, and it kind of goes back to arrogance almost. Like Xiaohu at the top of the day, he's like, we're gonna send Fnatic home. This is going to be easy. Their luck has run out. And you can see it right there in that type of play. They think that they're the better player, so they'll keep flipping that coin. They'll keep taking those gambles. And when it doesn't work out, it's suddenly a 45-minute game.
I mean, definitely holes in RNG's game that Fnatic was able to find and even extend the lead here from that point onward. The onus was on Fnatic to push the game forward and take the victory. They decide to go for a Baron, and MLXG comes up big with a Smite Seal. This one brought to you by Acer Predator.
I mean, this is one where it should be easy. It should be the Feast plus the Smite, timed with perhaps Burst coming out of your mid laner or whatever else. Unfortunately,
Cho'Gath ulti was just bugged.
Yeah, a little bit unlucky there, perhaps. But the fact that Jarvan's able to get in, steal it, and still flash out and survive just makes it that much worse. It's already frustrating enough that he stole the Baron. The fact that he gets out is just like, are you kidding me?
Oh, for sure, without a doubt. And then we return to this whole idea of mentality, right, for both of these teams. We already talked about the importance of Game 1, and we've seen it on the faces of the players in those high-intensity moments. All right, well, now you're sitting 2 up as RNG, winning a game that perhaps you shouldn't have won in terms of the mid-game.
They should not have won that game. That gold graph spoke for itself, Dash. That was like Fnatic favored. And RNG just literally, Royal never gives up, comes back from the dead. I'm sure Quickshot said that at least 10 times.
I mean, they probably shouldn't have, right? But at the same time, it's also ease of execution. And again, I have to look at the Vayne. If that's Reckless with that gold lead on a Tristana, that game is hilariously easy to win because you can walk forward, you can siege turrets, you can team fight aggressively, while you still have the ability to rocket jump out, you can self-peel. There's so much more you can do on a champion like that. And I just feel like the barrier of execution is so high, even when you have all this gold on Vayne, that it's too hard to actually make it work. And I think that is such a big deal because even if you have all the gold, if you can't get active in the team fight, it doesn't really matter.
All right, Max Lore, you were playing on this stage yesterday in equally big moments. Game points, match points. We're there right now for RNG, but for Fnatic, they've got to start the miracle run yet again. They did it in groups. Can they do it here in the knockout stages? And if so, how do they do it? What would you be telling this squad right now backstage if you had their ear?
Well, someone has to take the leadership role from the Fnatic roster and tell their team, like, it's okay, we can still win, okay? Either that or some kind of motivational speech to, like, break this mental that they're probably all in right now. Like, we should have won that game. We made so many mistakes. We have so many regrets. But someone needs to take that role and just say, guys, we're here. We have to perform. Let's just play our hearts out. We have, you know what? We might lose the next game, but it doesn't matter. Let's just play and win the game.
I mean, that said, RNG has elected red side yet again, and so we're going to be in this exact same situation for Fnatic. They're going to have to find a solution on blue side where they haven't found a solution just yet.
Also, buy pinks.
Buy pink horns. Big one out of Azael there. Frosk, any last words here for Fnatic?
I just don't want to see another Janna first pick. Like, I understand Janna's strong, but take away the Tristana. SKT found the priority in the very end against Misfits, and I think Fnatic need to find it here.
I was going to say, proof of anything is you guys yesterday redefining the meta and forcing SKT to adapt to you.
But I think if RNG choose red side again out for this third game, they have a pick ready for Tristana as well. Maybe the Kog'Maw Janna.
All right, well, it's going to be an uphill battle if Fnatic want to do it. RNG are 1 win away from earning their spot in the semifinals. We'll see if Fnatic can fight back in Game 3 after the break.